Welcome to the Queen's Voice, where we interview visionary women and men helping humanity evolve into something even greater. I'm your host, Ava. Our guest today is, in my opinion, the real deal. He has the ability to very gently, with no ego, no new age fluff, to help people genuinely connect with their unseen help for guidance, for healing, for illumination on their journey. He has traveled widely. He's learned from and practiced with Native Americans, Buddhists, Christians, Hindu spiritual communities. He has been extensively trained with the recognized authentic institutions like the Barbara Brennan School of Healing, that you no doubt have heard of, the Energy Healing Institute, and many more. He founded askanangel.org to help people have direct experiences with their angels. And he has spoken publicly to educate the public about the realities of other planes of existence and the beings there. And he has facilitated large and small gatherings in the Americas and Europe for over 20 years. Amazingly, he is also a successful businessman and innovator in the field of computer technology. So it seems like he's using all of his brain. He's created strategic partnerships with IBM and Unisys and Motorola and some of the biggest names, facilitating their ability to, and I think this is absolutely fantastic, accept divine help for their operations. There is nothing more needed, in my opinion, than to help companies and corporations get in touch with something beyond the purely human realm of what is very often, too often, money grubbing, a spirit of competition instead of cooperation, and this sort of idea of struggling to beat what they think of as the competition. That is a paradigm that so needs to be changed, and this gentleman is the man to do it. I first met our guest through my friend and colleague, the wonderful Lisa Lockhart, a metaphysical teacher, when she invited him to speak at the Museum of Woman. And I was immediately taken with his calm radiance. And I believed that I was in the presence of a master. And one of the ways I think someone is a master is that they are not saccharine in their manner. They are not overly spiritual. They're very real, they're very down to earth, and they're very wise. That is Christopher Dilts, and it is such a pleasure to be speaking with him one-on-one today. Welcome, Christopher.
Well, thank you, Ava. What a beautiful introduction. I so appreciate you and your work and all the beautiful work you've done through your center. And you've been so helpful to so many women and men, literally for decades now. And I'm so glad to see you spreading this work online, and look forward to helping you, encouraging you with that. And you really have posed some very important questions. We can all feel that we're on the brink of a major change right now. We're in the midst of that change. I'm thinking of that, that classic song. This is the dawning of the Age of Aquarius, right? From here. And so it's important that we know that is astronomically, astrophysically, and metaphysically true. We literally move through ages or eras, and this dawning of the Age of Aquarius is really only about 150 to 200 years old now. So one of the things that's it's so helpful is when we have a frame of reference, large scale frame of reference with the long term and then intermediate and short term. And when we take that long-term view, it's sort of like when we go to a really big mall, like, Fashion Island in Newport Beach, right? And we come to the mall map and it says, you are here. And there's this giant mall and there's that thing we're looking for, just like our soul has its journey and its route and its things that, it's here to go to and do and be. And so where are we on this cosmic metaphysical map right now? And having a context really helps to understand the great pressures we're under as individuals, as cultures, as nations, where we're under the pressure of change, a tremendous force for change. And it's very easy to forget that this force for change is good. It's Divine Mother, Father, God. It's the angels. They're helping us transform and change. And it takes a lot of energy to change. We all know that, right? Even if we want to lose 10 pounds, my goodness, what an effort that takes. And that's transformation. We're transforming to a lighter version of ourselves, but what we're being asked of by our souls, by the higher power, is more like transfiguration, which is much deeper than transformation.
Tell me the difference between transformation and transfiguration.
Sure. Transformation is, I want to be 10 pounds lighter, which I do. I did gain the COVID-19 with no gym or yoga. I've got most of it off, but I definitely have 10 to go. So losing weight is a transformation, right? Working out in a gym and being able to bench press 50% more weight. We're transforming ourselves into a stronger state. Transfiguration really requires a breakdown and a breakthrough. It's that spiritual process that people do in a sweat lodge and a sundance and 40 days in the desert, like Jesus, and leaving your kingdom, leaving your queen, your wealth and riches, as Buddha did, right? That's transfiguration. It's a really deep change. The simplest, most beautiful metaphor is that caterpillar that weaves a silk-like chrysalis around itself and turns into a butterfly. And we all think, oh, that's beautiful, that's so wonderful, look at that butterfly spread its wings and fly on the breeze to a flower, floating weightlessly and resting in beautiful flower petals now. But what we don't see inside that chrysalis is that poor little caterpillar turned into green jelly, right? It just completely broke down. It completely melted. It had no idea.
Right. And it's so amazing that you tune into that and speak to that, because just yesterday we were talking in our Sunday women's services about the chrysalis and the caterpillar and the soup, the chaotic soup. Where the chrysalis does not know where it's going. The imaginal cells are in there, but it's hard to see them or know them or trust in them. And so it's amazing that you just zero right in on that, because that's just what we were talking about. Say more about how this applies to humans. There's the butterfly, but how are our imaginal cells working for us when we might be in that state of fear, of wondering what the hell is going to happen to us in the future?
Well, so remember, those are the powers of nature working. It's the nature of that caterpillar when it was born. Inside that little caterpillar's soul, just like is the seed of the butterfly, like an acorn, right? We look at an acorn, that's going to become an oak tree. Right, it's going to use the powers of the sun, the earth, the rain, the winds, and be transfigured from an acorn to an oak tree, right? It's almost unimaginable what powers turn a hard little acorn into this beautiful 1,000-year-old oak tree. So one of the most important things for us to hold as a framework is the power behind this transfiguration is good. We are all is inclusive, everyone, we are all masters in the becoming. Like that acorn will become an oak tree. Every one of us will do what St. Francis, St. Clare, St. Teresa, what Jesus, what Buddha, what Kuan Yin, we're all on the journey to become that. And that might seem unimaginable. How could I, this little acorn, be like one of those oak trees? And I really used to look at it that way. I would study Buddha or Kuan Yin or Jesus and just think, they're from some completely different species. They're from some, divine mother, father, God inspired being. But to really take it in deep, that no matter how many lifetimes, no matter how many incarnations, those are just like a season to that acorn and oak tree, right? There's a season it is planted. There's a season it breaks out of that shell, that the little roots go down, the first green sprigs come up. So if we can combine these two things, where am I on my journey, acorn to oak, and where is the planet Earth on its journey as we're coming into the dawning of the Age of Aquarius? We're at the very beginning. This is still a very, very primitive planet. We have gadgets, we have gizmos, we have high tech. They're only gadgets and gizmos, right? And people say, oh, but we're so advanced with jets and the internet and landing on the moon. And they said, why do you say we're still primitive? And I said, well, we'll be advanced when a sufficient number of people on Earth cannot even sleep at night if there's a hungry child, if there's a child without health care, if there's a child that can't get an education, we won't even be able to sleep. Then we'll be in the middle of that Age of Aquarius. And that's just a big waking up, right? It's a waking up, it's an awakening call. So if you think about it like this, these eras take about 2,000 years to unfold. The Greeks, the great Greek philosophers, Plato, Pythagoras, who had an amazing mystery school. It's from Pythagoras that the mathematics to build Grecian temples, right, that we still use today, that the Masons, the Freemasons used building the pyramids and, and building buildings today. These representations of divine order that are universal, that are the unfolding of this divine plan, like the acorn to the oak tree. So if we know we're part of that, that these forces for change are only bringing us into our full embodiment, helping us become a master, then we can look at these seasons, winter for what winter is, and spring for what spring is, and etc. So that context is really important to hold.
Share with us, Christopher, please, your perspective on what this past year has meant metaphysically, in addition to what you've just spoken.
Yes, until we reach that level of being a Buddha or a Kuan Yin or a Jesus, we're subject to the planetary influences, the planetary karma, our own personal karma, family karma, national karma, right? We haven't mastered that yet. Jesus was able to walk on water and stop a storm with just a thought. Other great masters too. So we know we're on the way to that. And in the meantime, we're in a very intense training gym. Sometimes I joke, and it's like our souls were like those, kind of like teenage boys who had too much to drink, went out, signed up for the Marine Corps, woke up in the morning and said, what do we do? It's like, well, you signed the contract, you're in now. So here we are incarnated with both all of our soul's gifts, those wonderful things that we're here to share and master. And also, if we want to call it karma, we can call it karma. We can also call it our lesson plan on the way to being a master. And all of us, we've gone to school, we've studied, we've had to pass exams and tests. Very few of them are easy, right? Most of them, especially the important ones, are very hard and very challenging. We make lots of mistakes. We have to practice, redo, repeat. So right now, the ante has really been upped, right? It's like this transfiguration has been doubled down. So another way to think about this, where I live, it's a nature preserve, and I've been this way forever. But sometimes a bird may get into my house, or a little mouse, or a spider, or something like that. So I'll go and with a Tupperware and a cardboard, I'll get that creature, right, and take it back outside. And yet to that little creature, they mostly, sometimes I can like talk to them, send them images, and they'll relax, but usually they don't. Usually they're panicking. They think I'm going to kill them, right? So when we feel these forces we can't control, when it seems like they're taking things from us, right, and they're stopping the life as we know it, it's very challenging to shift out of our sympathetic nervous system, our fight or flight, into our parasympathetic, our intuitive, and say, oh, this is the hand of Divine Mother, Father God, taking me to a better place, moving me more into alignment, attunement with my soul's mission. But if we breathe deep and pause for a minute and we let those forces work, right, they're always carrying us to the next unfoldment of our soul, and everything behind it is love-based. Now, part of this big change as we're going into the Age of Aquarius is that it was intended that this be a time of great choice, that we're either going to choose love or fear. Make choices of love, continue to make them, speak words of love, gather with people who are choosing love, work towards love. Love is going to get brighter and brighter. It's going to get more and more brilliant, more and more attractive. And this at the same time, fear is going to become much stronger. It will look like it's equally as strong as this great love that's coming. And this is how creation works in the realm of duality. Earth exists in the realm of duality. Day and night, hot and cold, up and down, male and female. The way that evolution, the way that life goes forward on Earth is through this dance of duality, yin and yang, man and woman, sun and moon, etc. So I wanted to say the fear is going to get stronger and stronger and stronger too. And it's because for the last cycle, most people have remained in the middle, in this kind of gray zone in the middle. If you think of a classic bell-shaped curve, like a horseshoe, most of humanity stayed in the middle, right? You had your Buddhas and your Jesus and your Saint Teresa's and people over here. You had your Genghis Khans and your Stalins and your Hitlers over here. Most people, like a herd, I'm going to stay in the middle. I'm not going too much into that love stuff, and I'm not going too much into that fear stuff. So what's happening is the polarization so strong, it's going to invert this curve. And so what you won't have anymore is the middle. You'll have very bright love, very bright light, and you'll have very dark fear. And this is simply the way this cycle works to give birth to a new consciousness, birth to a new form of life. Painful.
One of the things that much of my community deals with is the reality of daily life and feeding their children and paying their rent. And it is very easy when things seem to be, here's a woman, for example, I spoke with just yesterday, and she's worked for the last 15 years to build a business and to feed her children and to make a nice home for herself. And she has no partner. And now her business is crashing because of COVID, and she's in deep fear, which I completely understand. It's a little facile to say, well, just be love. There's like, no, I got to feed my kids. I got to keep a roof over my head. I've got to, feed my dog. I've got to put gas in the car. And in this patriarchal system, when we are so imbued with fear all the time, and when the whole system is set up not to support each other, a lot of women feel that they're very much on their own all the time, struggling, and that they don't really have a support system. That's something obviously we need to work on. How can women remember the incredible benefits of not being in fear when they're holding an eviction notice?
Yes.
You know what I mean? It's like the practical realities of how do you hold that?
I was raised by a single mother. My father passed away very, very early in life. I had 2 younger brothers. It's so important to remember, though, that we all have intuition. We are all on this journey of a master in the becoming. If you look at any of these masters' lives, these saints' lives, none of them got the spiritual equivalent of winning the lotto. Their lives were full of struggle, full of difficulty, full of pain, right? Remember, it's our intuition, it's that connection to our spirit that helps us find the best direction. Even as little as going left or right, 10 degrees farther left, 10 degrees farther right, postponing that decision for 10 minutes or half an hour. Those small choices add up to a huge difference in where you are a year or two from now. I've always loved sailing, right, with a sailboat. I learned how to navigate with the stars, celestial navigation. But the thing about a sailboat or plane, it's rarely actually on course. It's only actually perfectly on course 1 or 2% of the time. The rest of the time, you're constantly course correcting, right? The current shifting, the wind is changing, something's happening. So when we're in this, vessel of life, this boat, this boat of the body and the being, there are still those higher forces and energies wanting to help us. The wind still does want to fill our sails, but when we're in fear, it really gives us tunnel vision and we don't see the options. I can't tell you how many times, like when I've done individual sessions with people, they've exhausted their mind, right? The mind only gets you so far. One of the terrible shortcomings of our Western education is it focuses on the intellect, right? The intellect. In the yoga tradition, there's 16 aspects of mind. Intellect's only one of those 16. It's not even considered the most valuable. But we have been trained for success. That's our intellect, it's our conscious mind, it's our thinking ability. And we turn into one of those New England soft-shell crabs with this giant claw that's our mind, right? And this other little tiny one that's
is it not true that the ancient texts talk about this aspect of mind as being the intellect, being like a knife that can be very useful, but is only good for cutting things up into smaller pieces? So it's not
Yes.
it's not about wholeness. Using the intellect, you can never use the intellect to bring about a feeling of wholeness. And so this dominator model system that we live in absolutely emphasizes the all consuming greatness of the intellect to the complete exclusion of other forms of divine intelligence. And if we keep relying on that, we just keep chopping our lives up further and further with this knife of the intellect. It does not help us with our intuition, with feeling the unseen help. Would you say that was true?
Yes, and you said that so well, and that's exactly how the Hindus describe it. The Hindu masters, that the intellect is a knife. It's very sharp. It's for cutting. It's for piercing and cutting. So we will honor that. It is really the use of the intellect that brought science into being, that brought us out of the dark ages, gave us the lifestyles we're used to. But it's become so out of balance now, right? That lets both hemispheres of the brain work. When we study, Buddhist masters, Christian mystics, Zen masters, when you just look at brain scans, their brains function very differently than the average person. The centers of activity, the unity, we have that left hemisphere and right hemisphere. We have a pineal gland that sits right between them. That pineal gland has tissue sensitive to light, just like your eyes. So how do we do that? We meditate. We do breathing exercises, pranayams. One of the beautiful teachings of Jesus is, let thy eye be single and thy body will be filled with light. Jesus was a master. The female and male disciples around him and students, they were like very advanced yogis. So when he spoke to them in that coded language, they understood what he meant. So when we open our third eye, our intuitive eye, when we shift awareness from the five senses to this intuitive center, our body will be filled with light. All of our chakras light up, right? Chakra means wheel of light. They all light up. They all start bringing in, expanding, flowing with energy. Now, the thing is, every chakra, all 7 of them, have intuitive centers. It's not just the third eye. The heart is where your intuition about love is. Your throat, your intuition about truth. Your root, your intuition about security and safety and stability and being connected to what will nourish you and what will replenish you. So when we allow ourselves, and coming back to your question, when we allow ourselves to too much stay in a state of fear and anxiety and nervousness, our chakras close down, right? They contract. It's like having white knuckles holding on to something so tight. then we're like that little insect or mouse in my house, right? Here's this God being coming to put you back out where you live. And it's like, oh, I'm going to die. I'm going to die. It's so powerful to do even 2, 3, 5 minutes of pranayams or breathing exercises. And one that I love is called 3-part yoga breath. It's simply deep, slow, steady breathing. What those pranayams or breathing exercises do is they relax your body, they calm your nervous system, and they let your mind go into the intuitive state. Some studies at Harvard and Dartmouth that I've been able to participate in show that in as little as, for most Americans, somewhere between 7 to 11 minutes, you can shift from your fight or flight, your sympathetic, to your parasympathetic. So one super powerful exercise is to just, like, maybe every time you look at your watch or your clock, just notice how you're breathing. Are you taking full deep inhales, pausing for a moment? Are you breathing out with slow, steady exhales? We're really designed to use our full lung capacity. Our lungs, right, they breathe in oxygen, the very fire of life that helps us live. They breathe out carbon dioxide, all these other toxins. Most North Americans just breathe in a very shallow manner. And that's been true for Europeans too, right? When the first Europeans landed in Hawaii, Hawaiians called the Europeans howlies. It wasn't then an insult. It just meant shallow breathers who don't know how to breathe.
Is that what howly means? Shallow breather?
That's the origin. They don't know how to breathe. We are designed with 7 bodies, right? The physical body, the etheric body or energy body where our chakras are, our astral body of light, the mental body, all 16 parts, not just the intellect, right? The mental body, then our soul, causal body. So from that soul down is 5 bodies, not just one. And our soul and those beings that mean to help us, they can help us so much more effectively when those 5 bodies are aligned. But a few minutes of deep breathing and centering aligns all 5 of those bodies, it aligns the chakras, and literally your vision opens, right? Because you're sensing with all of your chakras now that energy, that intelligence, that power that wants to help you. You look a little farther to the left or a little farther to the right, and there's something right there that you didn't see. As challenging as it is, stopping for even 5 minutes to simply breathe deep, wherever a person is, I know it's really challenging in places like Southern California, there's probably a tree around you somewhere where you could just lean against that tree, sit under that tree, or some spot in nature, or rock, grass, anything, right? Sit for 5 minutes, breathe deep, practice letting go of everything. We can do these very short, intermittent surrenderings. I know intermittent fasting is really big right now, so we could think of this as an intermittent anxiety fast, right? Or fast.
Oh, I love that.
So just for a few minutes we breathe, and we're not doing this to solve a problem. We're not demanding a spiritual answer. We're not demanding a solution. We're just letting go and breathing. We're basically opening up. We're letting ourselves become, for a few minutes, an open vessel. So I'm putting this together in the framework of experiment with it, do the logical things, make your plan, but don't be attached to it all while you're on this journey, right? If you look at all the great myths, whether they're European, Japanese, Chinese, Native American, we're all men and women on this hero's journey, and we have to go into the woods or the forest or the cave. We have to go out of our normal sense of being for these experiences. So going out of our normal sense of being, it means, yes, you have your listings to look at, you have your schedule, but as soon as you feel a prompting, as soon as something makes you want to turn left or right, you do it, and then the magical deer appears, or white buffalo calf woman, or right, the mystical fairy. I'm talking in woo-woo terms right now. Let me come back to science. Go ahead and experiment. If you could solve the problem you have right now with your mind, you would have solved it by now.
What an excellent point. Yeah, if your life is working perfectly, just as you use your mind every day and think things through logically, if you have no problems and everything is working for you in health, in relationship, in money, in career, well, then fine, you don't need your darn angels.
My point is that when we're not attached to the particulars, remember the divine knows better than we do what will best serve us right now. Yogananda, one time someone asked him, who did not believe in gurus or saints or masters, said, well, why do I want to bother with this spiritual nonsense and learn how to meditate and read all these, esoteric things? It's all nonsense. Why would I want to do that? And he said, well, you do see what these other people have accomplished, right? These great saints, masters, gurus. They've learned how to fly the plane. And would you like to learn from an expert how to fly the plane, or do you want to teach yourself?
If you had 1,000 people in a ballroom of a hotel right now, and you had 5 minutes to point out to them or to point them in a direction of how to improve their lives, how to think about things now as humanity is unfolding, what might you say to them?
What I would focus on is to develop a very astute awareness of your own state, the state that you're in. How are your 7 chakras right now? Is your root open, connected? How is your heart right now? Is your heart open? Is it connected to your solar plexus, to your 2nd sacral chakra, to your root? And think of yourself like a pyramid, right? Like a great pyramid in Egypt. You're designed with a sacred geometry. You're designed with sacred energies. You're meant to have a big base like a pyramid, right? The higher we want to reach, the bigger base we need while we're on Earth. So there is a golden mean between the horizontal base and the vertical top. So we start with our root. Is my root connected and relaxed right now? Because that is the source of security, safety, and stability. And that will instantly reveal your consciousness to you right now. Well, if my root isn't opened, what am I anxious and afraid of right now? Why is it clenching up, right? What's it got right now? Is it about money, about my health, about my family, about one of my children? And you say, oh, I meant to bring attention to that. Thank you, root. Thank you. Let's open back up. One very, very simple truth is there's never a good time to have a chakra contracted. It never does anything good for you. It's never helpful other than as a signal. I would really say consider that like your car alarm going off, the fire alarm in your house ringing, right? It's like, oh, let me go to that now. Then you work through your other 7.
Fear can affect women and men equally. Some women would say that women have cause for greater fear because things are stacked against them in a patriarchy. They are more abused than men. As abused as men are, women have more to be fearful of. Can you talk about how, from your male perspective, which I think is very expanded, can you talk about how women can go beyond that fear? Because you talk about opening up your chakras, and I will tell you that there are women, and you undoubtedly know this, there are women who can't open up anything because they've been so harmed that they are just completely shut down in every way. I've attended classes where the teacher would say, oh, open up your lower chakra, and I can see the women around me just literally clenching up because they can't open down there because they've been harmed down there. And so we need ways to go beyond that.
First of all, let's acknowledge the truth of what you have said. If we look back through recorded history that we have, 2,000 years, 3,000 years to Egypt, China, this has been a world largely dominated by, we can call it alpha male gone wild consciousness. So let's just acknowledge that has been true, that the earth is evolving, that all of us, especially the people watching and listening, we've had many, many lifetimes to get to where we are now. These prior earth lifetimes were in even much more primitive, much harsher, much more difficult conditions. In most cultures, throughout most of time, Women were property. But let's be really aware when you're feeling that kind of fear or anxiety, filter out how much of that is appropriate here and now. So many women I've worked with, it can be a very, very high factor. Like we might find that 80, 88, 94% of that fear is from past lifetimes. It's not even current. Part of this, a lot of times, women will get so frustrated. They will have tried meditation and yoga and these things, and it's like these fears, anxieties are persistent. So then we start to ask, well, how much of it is in this lifetime? And you'll find, especially women who are incarnating to be conscious, incarnating to help change the world, they've had many, many lifetimes of oppression and of violence and of victimization. So we want to update, say, yes, but what about now? I understand violence and I understand the reality of it. And we really want to be careful of what's appropriate right now. Most of the time, that level of anxiety and fear will not be appropriate, right? So we want to come into real time. What's real for me right now? There's never a time to not have your root open. That's the source of your strength. Your root connects you to the earth,
Right.
the divine mother, to the goddess, the divine feminine. The earth really, when we do our deep meditations, when we refer to the earth, we go to our root, we go to our soul, and we bring back soul memories, and we can feel and sense the earth beneath us is the incarnation. It's the divine feminine aspect of creation, the body of the earth. That's what the earth originated at. It's what it was birthed to be this body for all the divine children to come through. The mistake I think that happens because of the pain of past trauma, we think opening the root will make us susceptible, will make us vulnerable, and it's exactly the opposite. It grounds us, it makes us strong, it makes us steady, it gives us power greater than our own. I'll say one more thing about it, and I'm saying a lot, but this is so important. I do a lot of work with business, with women business executives in Asia, right? Asia, the sexism is far worse than here. They're not nearly as updated as here. And these women are so successful. How they're being successful is they're really mastering their own ability to open their root and all their chakras. So their intuition is very, very high functioning. They're rooted, they're really solid. They're so grounded and solid that, the males around them, they just love being around them. They don't even know why. And they don't feel threatened. They don't feel like it's a power struggle. It's kind of like, well, what man would try to beat on the ocean or kick the granite dome of Yosemite, right? It's like, well, it just doesn't happen. So they get very, very grounded, and they're very positive, and the answers that come to them, the solutions that they find, are always win-win. It's good for the whole tribe. It's good for the whole family.
Which harkens back to something that we've studied a lot, and that is ancient matriarchies. Before patriarchy arose, that is a reality too. And if women can remember that, remember themselves in that position as the good guide for humanity, as the good queen who leads without any ego, because the word patriarchy and matriarchy are so similar. They think that if patriarchy means men dominating women, then matriarchy means women dominating men. And we know from the great Heidi Gettner Abendroth's work, one of the premier scholars on ancient and modern matriarchies, is that matriarchies were actually egalitarian and are egalitarian, with women and children as the focus, and then women and men leading equally. And so when we can get to that place, then we know we're not dominating someone else. We are all working together.
That is such a key point.
From my perspective, as a person in community, there seems to be a tremendous amount of hating between men and women nowadays. There seems to be more than ever. You go online and there's men's rights activist groups complaining bitterly about women. There are women complaining bitterly, you cannot trust a man, you cannot trust any man. There's just such a divide right now that I am seeing. between women and men? What would be some useful things that we could do and remember to help heal the divide between women and men right now?
So the first thing would be embrace whatever that anger or frustration or betrayal or disappointment, embrace the emotion and feeling, take it deeper within yourself, connect it to how much is real time, how much is present time, how much is past, and what is the underlying message with this? You know, one of the really great Native American shaman, he called these the red emotions. The red emotions that come up: anger, frustration, betrayal, envy. And you'd say, whenever a red emotion comes up, say, hello, my friend, what have you brought for me today? Hello, my friend, what have you brought? So we're changing the relationship with that negative emotion energy, with this thing that's triggering us. We're immediately changing it into a friend, and knowing that this friend is bringing something to us. If we can calm ourselves down and listen. That sounds easy. It's very hard, especially in the beginning.
And
So
our tendency, obviously, is to push it away if it seems like something unpleasant. But I remember many years ago, I was studying with Stuart Wilde, and he said exactly the same thing. We were in Ecuador on an ayahuasca journey, and I came out to where he was standing, and there were these very unpleasant looking beings in the grass of the hacienda where we were, and they were sort of popping their heads up, and they were ugly and frightening to me. And everybody else was asleep having their journey, and I was kind of coming out of mine. And he just turned to me, and he could see the repulsion on my face and in my body. And he said, Ava, the only way to get rid of them is to welcome them back home. You must put your arms around them and welcome them back home. And that was an amazing revelation of oneness for me. The idea of taking something repulsive and welcoming it back home as a way of wholeness and healing.
so powerful, and repetition is really the key, just like repetition with anything, learning yoga, playing the piano. So when I asked that shaman, well, how many times do I need to do this? I said, well, it depends on how deep the issue is and how many lifetimes it stuck with you and how triggered you are by it. He said, you know, for me, I find with the really tough ones, so, you know, 8, 9, 10,000 times will do it. You know, we all want this to be like a New Age movie, right? The little wounded child or the big demon comes up, and we sprinkle some New Age glitter on it, and boom, we're done. It's usually much more like an onion. The layers come off, and the layers come off, and the layers come off. So be really open to saying, hello, my friend, many, many times. How you can know it's working is when it shifts from being repulsive, fear-producing, anxiety-producing, when you so much want to look away from it, where you actually start to feel this as a friend. Then the dialogue will open, right? Then this demon or poor, horrible, disfigured, wounded child would say, Christopher, there's this kind of love I never got from another person, and I'm still limping, and I'm still hiding under a rock. Some part of you still won't even come into the light because you're so afraid you won't be loved. Usually these core issues, I've worked with thousands of people. I've rarely met anyone that has more than 2 or 3 or 4 at the most core issues in this area. It's rare to have more than that. Our higher self, our souls, our guides know we can't handle too much. But what happens is these things get complicated through relationships in past lifetimes, and suddenly we're listening to a Bach variation. We think there's 100 themes in that. No, there isn't. It's variation, right, on one theme that's actually simple. But the process is really profound and powerful. So as we're changing that inside ourselves, the triggers will lower, and we're much more able to see that person who we're so triggered by, the thing they said, did, or represent to us, as though they're a messenger, right? That is the messenger. Hello, my friend, what did you bring for me today? The other thing is it changes our energy posture. So rather than attacking or defending, we open up again, right? We don't open to negative external energies, not at all, right? We're opening our crown, our root to source, our heart to source. Remember, when you turn on a light, darkness doesn't go into that light bulb, right? It doesn't happen. So that's the mistake earlier, talking about, I'm feeling wounded, vulnerable, I'm afraid right now. I'm not opening my chakra, I'm not taking a chance. So that's like saying, well, I'm in a dark room, I can't find my car keys, but I'm not going to turn on the light. I'll just go around on the floor, bump into things, right, till I find them. But damn it, I'm not turning on that light. That's it. I know what, one time I turned it on, and this happened back in 1492 when Columbus came to America, and I was a native, and I was like, oh, I won't do it again.
Right, right. Thank you. Many women say to me when they're in relationship with their primary partner, who in many cases happens to be a man, they feel that somehow a lot of men these days are not taking full responsibility or not completely mature. They say my husband is 45 or 50, or my boyfriend or partner, and when I'm living with him, it feels like I am taking care of, I have two children, it feels like I'm taking care of a third child. I do not feel that we are equally working together to create life. I feel like I'm his mom too. And so we talk a lot in the Queen teachings. We talk a lot about the overgiving mother and how women, because we do have, even if we've never perhaps had a physical child, we still have the principle of mother in us. And it is very easy in this culture to move to that space of what we refer to as the overgiving mother, where we just feel we just have to be responsible for everybody's feelings and take care of everybody and make sure that everything is okay. And that leads us to a discussion about boundaries. What are the appropriate boundaries for women to have? Without blaming men for this situation, can you speak to, because I believe women have a role to play too. If we stop being the overgiving mother, then we perhaps would make a space for men to be different, meet us more equally. We must stop mothering men. From your perspective as a man, one of the questions we were going to ask you is, what do you think the mature man, the man over 45, what should he be doing with his life? What should he be focused on? What would be most useful to him? Can you talk a little bit about men growing up and what might be going on with men and women right now with regard to this particular question of this difference in maturity and responsibility level?
What a key dilemma and key question. So in this age, this point of the dawning of the Age of Aquarius, in general, women are leading it. And that's just how it is, right? So we could say that's not right, it's not fair, it's not equitable, it's not just, it doesn't matter. The sun comes up in the morning, whether we think it's fair or not. In general, women are leading this. The Dalai Lama said it is the modern woman, especially the Western woman. He didn't mean geographically West, he meant progressive thinking, that balance, who are really leading the way into this new era. So that is just the way it is. We can accept that. It's meant to be that way. And part of that is because women are just naturally more intuitive in most modern cultures, right? It's just nature. It's easier for women to connect to their intuition, to open their intuition. Men, it usually takes a lot more commitment or a breakdown and breakthroughs and so on. So let's just say, all right, here's a role to be a leader in new consciousness integration. And then the question is, when does that become unhealthy? When do boundaries start being broken? When is it the giving too much, right? So just like, and I don't mean to cast women in the role of mother in all the relationships, that isn't appropriate. Again, I'm being very general now. Women move much faster with all of this than men. One of the metaphors I use when I'm working with couples is, Yes, it's like you got on the escalator at Macy's or Tiffany's. You both went in on the ground floor. You're 5 levels up, and he's not to the second floor yet, right? It's like, okay, you just there you go. So, there's a point where you get so far up, so many floors ahead, that it's just simply not going to work. And it might be that your soul agreement or soul contract is complete for now, right? It may be complete for now. You can check in with that and say, am I meant to, stay in this mode like this, or have I really checked off all the boxes on this soul agreement or contract? Now, if you have, it's still your choice to stay there or not. It doesn't mean you automatically leave. You just find what's right for yourself. But it might help you change your expectations and change your timelines. I'm sure every woman who's watching remembers elementary school, remembers being in, fourth grade or fifth grade. In my school, it was, there's square dance day, right? And myself and the boys are going, oh my God, I'm going to kind of, Mom, can I be sick today? I'm not, oh God, square dance, touching girls, oh, right? And the women already like 5 years past that, they're thinking about the prom.
Right, right. That's
so,
absolutely true. It's well known that girls mature faster than boys, especially at that level.
Yes, so just know that that's part of it too. And then you're looking for these balance points. Use the higher self dialogue, bring it into your meditation, see how much you can do internally, see what begins to shift or change. And then keep in mind, like, where are we on these escalators? Maybe he's gaining a little bit now, right? He's gaining a little bit now. And experiment with that, try it. The issue for the men is that most of the rites of passage for most men have been lost. There were journeys that men would go on, from being an infant to being a toddler to being a boy. There were series of manhood rituals you did with the other men. They brought you along. These things, by the way, weren't fun. They were terrifying. They were putting you in fear of your life. You might be in the woods all by yourself, right? So it was putting you under both the support to get there, right? I mean, in a tribe, men were wise too. They knew when a boy was ready. They weren't going to push a boy too fast or too far, but they were challenging. They were difficult. They were meant to mature you. I mean, for me, my father dying early was like that. Wow, right? You can't fool around anymore. You got to get serious now. And now at the same time, remember that our culture has lost, for the most part, those rites of passages. Very few men have an actual brotherhood they belong to. I don't mean watching football. I don't mean, cycling together or going to the gym together. I mean an actual brotherhood where elders are recognized, where it's valued to become wise, where it's valued to become more mature, where the respect of these elders is important to you. That's actually flipped. And, we have to be careful in ascribing blame for this. Our culture, especially post-World War II, has been a consumer culture. The smartest people on earth, the brightest people, the largest amounts of money have been spent to manipulate us to want stuff and buy stuff, right?
And focus on the youth rather than the elders. We have completely thrown away. We've been so foolish in throwing away our elders and their wisdom, and we belittle elder people in many ways. We make fun of them. They're the butt of jokes. It's been a grave mistake to push down the elder wisdom of our civilization.
And we see this get more extreme the more materialism and commercialism is embraced. And I know most people have seen OC Housewives, right? The Orange County Housewives. They didn't make Orange County husbands because they're so boring, right? So many men in that gym had, I guess I would call, they had fallen into the Peter Pan principle. Their emotional maturation wasn't much past high school or college senior, and they froze there. Now, in our culture, if you start succeeding materially, right, you can start buying fancy stuff, fancy cars, second homes, maybe even your own plane. That has become such a value in general in our society, that it completely outweighs what you were saying earlier. Which of those men is not going to admire that 80-year-old Zen Buddhist, right? Or the Dalai Lama in
And
that world?
it's such a patriarchal reversal, because in matriarchal cultures, status is gained by how much you give away, how much you provide to others. And in our culture, it's flipped, patriarchal reversal. It's flipped, that the more toys you can acquire and get into your sandbox, the more we admire you. And that's something we really need to return to ancient wisdom on, in my belief.
The loss of the rituals and your upgrading and maturing as a young boy, as a young man, the loss of a tribe, of being part of a tribe, of having an identity and being respected. I mean, people, I don't mean to oversimplify, but whatever culture we're in, usually your name would change after that ritual, right? You might be named for an animal, a power animal, a mountain, a stream, a Norse god, a Greek god might become part of your name. Something would incorporate in you, and the people around you would recognize that. Oh, you are strong bear now, or and you had a place in that tribe, and you had a security for being who you are, right? It wasn't about the model of car you have or how exclusive your home is. So one of the things we can do, as possible, is start going back to heart-centered values, right? What do you really truly appreciate in a man? It will be things like truth, integrity, trustworthiness, steadfastness, security. But in our male world, in our male culture, those things have all been suborned below financial success, right? And that is so strong now. So men, especially as they're getting older, for them, what if they haven't achieved 8 figures, right? High or 7-figure net worth?
Well, then they are simply a disrespected beta male. It's
Yes.
very unfortunate.
Yeah, they're a failed alpha male. The thing about alpha males, whether it's gorillas or buffalo, there's only one, right? So one of the things for men, and it can help the women understand, is there's only a few alpha males anywhere. Whether it's the high school football team or basketball team. I was able to play in my high school basketball team. Well, that's out of like 2,000 men, right? What about all the other ones? Well, that we don't have that many sports anymore, or activities. We don't have things for them to be. I have my basketball tribe there, so they're disenfranchised.
Right.
So we want to be really careful about how much of this is personal, what's really applicable to ourselves and our relationship right now, and both as men, right? It's not the women in our lives. It's not your job to pay for any of that happened culturally or historically, right? That's not your bill. I'm not to give you a bill for any of that. The same thing for women. Be really careful. Don't give the men in your life a bill for things that they didn't personally do with you, right? And most men, I know this may sound like it doesn't fit your experience, most men want to please the important women in their lives. They want to help make you happy. They want to look at you and have you look back at them and think,
Christopher, I completely believe that. A wonderful, brilliant woman I studied with some years ago, named Alison Armstrong, who has a group called Celebrating Men, Satisfying Women. She taught me that the average man simply wants to be your hero, and he wants you to be happy. And the problem is he's unclear right now about how to do that. And so I completely believe that that is what men want.
I'm going to grossly oversimplify this, and excuse me, gentlemen who are watching, but sometimes the simplest advice that I can give to a woman when I'm doing work with her is practice talking like ESPN, headline talk. Lakers win by 6. right? Make sure he's got that. And in the fourth quarter, right? So this player did that. And at halftime, it was like, you put the headlines first, the important things first. Men are listening, they're scanning for, of all the things you're telling me, all of these emotions I don't quite get, and these rainbow colors and things that are happening, what is it that you really is important to you right now? And I know that should seem so obvious, but often it isn't.
Laundry needs doing. Details
Yeah.
at 11.
Exactly. News headlines speak, sports talk speak. You get your headlines in first, and then you can even say, "Boy, thank you for hearing me on that. Thank you for getting that. That was the most important thing. Now I have some other things I just want to tell you. You don't have to do anything about them. You don't have to fix them or support me in them. I just want to tell you these other things." That sounds trivial, but you would be amazed at how it shifts things. The other part of that too is, as you mentioned, as that other workshop leader you're speaking of, this is, I hope this, you take this in a funny way, get a really good, really modern, love-based How to Train Your Puppy book. Okay. And see how it applies to the men in your life, because
Yes,
mostly
yes,
what
and
I've
by that we do not mean to insult men in any way, but training people is like training your beloved noble creature dog.
It's like, here, my dear one, here's how to make me happy. It's only 4 or 5 things, and right, and you do the same reward system, because there's this one. I'm sorry, I can't remember her name right now. She's the author, and she's written books about men and women. And the cover of her book, there's this really complex machine on the left with all these buttons and knobs and dials and levers and screens, and that's the woman. Then on the other side, there's the man, and there's 3 buttons.
You are very well known for your Ask an Angel work. For those who may not be familiar with it, can you say a little bit about what that is? And are you still focused on that and still providing that at this time, given that we're in this kind of odd time of COVID? Tell us a little bit about Ask an Angel.
Yeah, so part of why I've stayed with that for so many years is that we all have our soul memories, and we remember the angelic realms, whether we're conscious of it or not conscious of it. We keep that soul connection to unconditional love, to this pure light, to this kind of a being that sees us in our soul form, that loves us unconditionally, that wants only the best for us, that has infinite patience for us. And all the thousands of people I've worked with, every person has a guardian angel, every single person. When that bond happens, when this guardian angel comes to your soul, it's an eternal bond. So this is a being that knows every past lifetime you've had, every thought, everything that you judge as good or bad. This angel knows and shines love on you, just like the sun, right? The sun shines on everyone. It doesn't make choices. So the angels shine on us like sunshine, and our souls remember that. The Pew Foundation, who does very reliable research, did a study, and 74% of North Americans believe in angels. That's higher than the number who believe in God. Right? Connections there. When we make a little deeper or a much deeper connection with our angels, the love increases, the flow of love, the feeling of love, the connection to love. And when you're feeling that, I am simply loved, not for how I perform or what I do or what I have or what kind I can give you. I'm simply loved. What happens is the fears we have, they get much smaller. The issues we have, even big wounds, they go from being like these big King Kong sized monsters that run our lives down to this little teddy bear stuffed monkey, right? It's the same fear, but the love is so much bigger now that in proportion, the fear is something we can now manage, we can deal with when we feel that love and support. And that love and support is there whether we work our way through that fear right now or not, whether we advance a step or we fall back 5 steps. That love doesn't change one bit. So the more we connect with that and work with that, we get greater and greater confidence, greater and greater willingness to do just what you said earlier. I can't open my root now. I can't open my heart, because only love is flowing through me. Nothing dark, nothing harmful will hurt me. And it gives us that courage. Now, courage, right, comes from courage, that French word center. It doesn't mean brave. It means being centered in your heart, right? When we're really centered in our heart, you can see this with any mother and her child. She can lift a car off her child, right? Because we're so centered in that love, that greater power comes into us. So that's what the angels help us with. I find it really reduces the amount of personal effort that you have to make when you're opening up to this support. It helps intuition open really quickly. When I'm working with like the women in Asia, for example, we really do work with connection to their guardian angel team, also to those beings that are really helping them. One of my clients, her specialty is in the healthcare industry. She has grown her business to be the biggest workers' comp processing company in the Philippines for the United States, the biggest medical transcription. What she does when she comes to the US is she asks Divine Mother, is this healthcare system good for me and my people? Now, she had a breakthrough of her own years ago where she realized her business isn't about medical transcription. Her business isn't about workers' comp claims. Her business is about providing mothers in the Philippines with good jobs so they can provide for their children and educate their children. When she had that realization, it was like, oh, that's what my purpose is. This is just a vehicle. What happened is she let go of her ego attachments about the business. She let go of that bringing her any self-esteem. She let go of it went up or went down. It's not important. My job is to help Divine Mother, help these human mothers, and help these families. So that's the kind of connection that Saint Therese has, or Saint Clare, or Jeanne d'Arc, right? Jeanne d'Arc called on that power and got all, reclaimed France, right, as a 14-year-old girl.
When someone comes to you and wants you to help them connect with angelic beings or the unseen realms, tell us a little bit more about how that works. And I really appreciated you talking about how it makes life easier, because most of the women I know feel they are tremendously overworked. And that is the biggest complaint I hear. We know that if we call upon the unseen help, that is definitely there. It can cause magical synchronicities that make our lives so much easier and that allow things to happen without us constantly using our human will, without us constantly taking action, working ourselves, nose to the grindstone. And so all of that is available to us. When you sit down with a new client, what does that look like? What might be some of the things you would do with her?
We start with some very simple foundational steps, like I will scan all of the person's chakras, which ones are open, closed, what kind of balance is there, what key issues are presenting, like perhaps between the throat and the heart chakra there are blockages or issues or things. Then we start with an alignment technique about, well, how are the seven bodies aligned and how are your seven bodies working? It's very much like, I like to say, our soul, a creator created us as a divine instrument, like a musical instrument, cello, guitar. Are the strings tuned? Are those seven strings of the chakras tuned? Are those seven strings of the seven bodies? Wherever they're out of tune, there's an issue. So it's really going back to what you said earlier. The more of this internal awareness, internal work we do, the less comes up as problems and struggles and issues in our work, health, or relationships. You literally can shift by agreeing with your soul. I'm going to be very open intuitively to what my soul lessons and karma are. I'm willing to sit here in a meditation, or I'm willing to light a candle. I'm willing to light a candle, put on some music, and just take a bath for half an hour and say, come up what will, and then let me work with it. So it looks like that. Then we'll translate that immediately into aspects of their business, aspects of their families. One of my really beloved clients, she's a child psychiatrist. When she started, she's in Germany. She was a child psychiatrist. She had 5 PhD psychotherapists working with her, she started connecting more and more and more to her mission, which was to help children diagnosed with ADHD and others, children being taken out of the school system, put on medication. She got really clear about that. She also was really clear, being German, very intelligent, very strong. She said, now, I've taken a 30-year lease on this castle. She lived in a castle, just like a Bavarian postcard. Castle on the hill, river in the valley. It looks so beautiful. She'd have a 30-year lease. I will never move my practice out of this castle, no matter what, and et cetera, et cetera. So in short order, she had hired 20 more psychotherapists, 20 more holistic healers, craniosacral, massage, etc. She resisted writing a book for about a year. When she finally said she just entertained the idea, the next week she met an author, most popular author of self-help books in Europe, and she had said, I'm not a writer. I don't have time for that. I could never dream of trying to pitch a book and being rejected. So she meets this other writer randomly, just at a bookstore. And this writer says, I will introduce you to the president of the biggest publisher in Europe. So within a week, she had 100,000 mark advance. She had an author to write the book. It became very popular. She now has a 7-month waiting list for her practice, and she's saved thousands of children from being put on drugs. We really connect with that purpose. The divine works through us. We're able to do more with less. We're able to do more.
Where is Christopher going from here? You have such an expanded view of life. There must be something on the horizon that you're interested in moving into or learning more about, or something you already have explored and you're getting ready to share it with your community. Can you share a little bit about what might be in the near future for you?
Yeah, I'm living in a very, very quiet place. It has high energy like a Sedona has. So I myself am going more and more into the mystic side of things. My life has been like this DNA and RNA spiral of business and spirit. There have been times where I thought I would never go back into the business world. And then a few years later, I am. Then I thought, oh, I'm so busy with this, I probably won't go so deep into the spiritual part, but they just keep combining like this. So I'm really working now with people who want to bring this into their businesses or their careers or their work, just because in our current model of society, that's where we touch the most people. That's where we have the biggest impact. When I was younger, a pivotal experience is I had started several software companies in my 20s, and I hadn't actually worked in a lot of corporations in America. So when I went out on the road with our software, our enterprise level solutions, I was shocked to see how difficult most American workplaces are, how challenging the environments are, how tough it is to show up as yourself, especially for women. I mean, for the women who are alive today, this is just like World War II. It's like the Allies have landed on Normandy Beach, right? We're partially into France, and it's a wave of newness, but it's very, very challenging. So what I find when I think, well, how am I most helpful? I think of people like Dr. Catherine and these thousands of children she's helped, or Riwa in the Philippines, and with all of these families. Now, I didn't set out to do that either, right? There's a spiritual principle where we often our higher purpose is at a perpendicular angle to what we're doing. For example, if you think of bees, right? Bees, their mission is to go get pollen and make honey for the queen of the hive, right? Ask any bee, what's your job? Bring back pollen, make honey for hive. That's what the queen wants. Now the bee isn't thinking, oh, I'm pollinating all of the crops and all of the fruit trees, right? Without that pollination process, we wouldn't have any food. But the bee doesn't get up thinking, I'm here to help humans have food, right? It goes to make honey. And that's its higher purpose on earth. So for us, if we think about, I hadn't thought this way before, thank you for inspiring me. If we think of money as honey, and we might think we're busy making honey, well, you know what? We're pollinating the earth too, with our soul's gifts, with our light, with our love, as we go about, right? Flying around for our honey or money. If we really keep in mind, God's moving me, Divine Mother, Father, God's moving me. I'm going to be open to that. Yes, I'm getting the pollen. But you know what, how I just interacted with that person, what we just said, what we just did, that apple blossom is going to be an apple now. So much happens right outside of our ordinary awareness. So there's a process of surrender and activity, right? We do our few minutes of breathing, of pranayam. We surrender to Divine Mother, Father God, the angels. We open up, we're a vessel. Let ourselves be filled. Then we go back to focused activity like that bee. We go pollinate, right? And we surrender again. We come back again. You asked what books I would recommend. Maybe for today's talk, it would be The Surrender Experiment by Michael Singer. And
Fabulous recommendation. Yes,
yes.
yes. Amazing person.
Especially for this time. So it's the surrender process. It's not a one-time deal. We do it over and over and over. It's iterations. Surrender activity. That's just like sailing that sailboat, right? I'm sailing. Look at the compass. Oh, 3 degrees this way. Oh, 5 degrees that way. Oh, all right. So we're surrendering and active. Now the thing is about doing quick cycles like that is your angels and the higher beings will pour in grace, they'll pour in light, they'll pour in extra energy every time you have a surrender moment, right? And that's the difference between sailing when we don't do that surrender or the breathing or the short meditation. We're rowing a rowboat, right? And we can only row so hard and we all get exhausted. And single moms are rowing with both hands and both feet, right? So let's go for sailing when we can, rowing when we must, and let those iterations help us with these, it'll help us process these really challenging energies right now. So we are finding our way out of this at the right time as a butterfly, right? Getting out of this current chrysalis. And those iterations really do expedite the process, make it more graceful.
Thank you. And that is such a wonderful way to wrap up. We have been talking with the very wonderful Christopher Dilts, and it has been our great pleasure to hear his wisdom. Christopher, thank you so much for being with us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you for your great work in the world and for all of the people that participate with you and carry their own light out into the world too.
Blessed be.